The funeral was a somber affair. Friends and family gathered under a gray sky to mourn the brutal murder of a man named Alex Thompson. Tears flowed, eulogies were spoken, but beneath the surface of grief, a strange current of whispers flowed through the crowd. As the casket was lowered into the ground, a chilling consensus formed among those who knew him best. The man in that box was not Alex. The police, however, were convinced. The crime scene was horrific, the body disfigured beyond easy recognition, but dental records and DNA samples, seemingly a perfect match, had closed the case. Alex Thompson, a successful but controversial businessman, was officially dead. The mourners, however, knew Alex better than any forensic test. They knew the slight scar above his left eyebrow that even severe trauma couldn't fully erase. They knew the specific way his right pinky finger was slightly crooked from a childhood injury. The body presented to them, though similar in build and hair color, lacked these telltale signs. His closest business partner, Mark, noticed the absence of a specific gold filling Alex was always complaining about. His estranged wife, Clara, knew the man in the casket didn't have the faint scent of sandalwood cologne that always clung to Alex's clothes, no matter how long ago he'd worn them. They shared furtive glances, their shared secret hanging heavy in the air, a silent pact of disbelief. But what could they do? Accusing the police of a massive blunder, of burying a stranger in Alex's place, sounded like madness. It was a conspiracy theory born of grief. They would be told. So they played their parts, offered condolences, and went home, each wrestling with the same impossible truth. Weeks turned into months. The shock of the funeral faded into a quiet, unsettling mystery. Life, for the most part, went on. Mark took over the struggling company, trying to salvage what was left from Alex's reckless dealings. Clara began the slow process of untangling their shared assets, discovering just how deep Alex's financial troubles ran. It turned out Alex wasn't just controversial. He was on the verge of being exposed for a massive fraud scheme that would have sent him to prison for decades. Suddenly, a faked death didn't seem so insane. It was a desperate, elaborate escape. The question that haunted them all was, who was the man in the grave? The answer was a grim one. He was likely a forgotten soul, a homeless man from the city's dark corners, chosen for his passing resemblance to Alex and his lack of connections. A ghost to replace a man who wanted to become one. The group of mourners, Mark, Clara, Alex's brother, and a few close friends began to meet in secret. They pooled their knowledge, piecing together the puzzle. Mark remembered Alex making strange inquiries about acquiring untraceable documents. Clara recalled him withdrawing a huge sum of cash just days before his death. They realized they had been played, used as pawns in Alex's sociopathic game. He had counted on their grief to blind them, their silence to protect him. The anger they felt was a slow-burning fire. They had mourned a man who was not only alive, but had also sacrificed an innocent person to save his own skin. The shared secret that once isolated them now bound them together with a new, steely purpose. They were no longer just mourners, they were a jury. Then, 6 months after the funeral, the first message arrived. It was a grainy photo sent to Mark's phone, a picture of Mark shaking hands on a new business deal taken from a distance. The accompanying text was simple and chilling. Looks like you're doing well. It's time to share the profits. It was him. Alex was back. He began to blackmail them one by one, demanding money, threatening to expose their own minor indiscretions if they didn't comply. He was arrogant, confident that he held all the cards. He believed they were still grieving, still confused, completely unaware of his grand deception. He thought he was a ghost haunting them for money. He had no idea he was walking right into a trap that had been set for months. The group had been preparing for this moment. They knew Alex's greed would eventually drive him out of the shadows. They had anticipated his return. Instead of panicking, they played along. Mark feigned terror, agreeing to a cash drop. Clara pretended to be a desperate widow, willing to pay for his silence. They knew contacting the police was not an option. How could they explain that the man the police thought was murdered was now blackmailing them? They would be implicated, their lives turned upside down. They were on their own, and a dark, unspoken agreement formed between them. Alex had orchestrated a fake death, but the crimes he committed, the fraud, the murder of a homeless man, the emotional torture of his loved ones, were very real. Justice had to be served, and they would be the ones to deliver it. The plan was meticulously crafted. They chose the location for the final payment, a secluded warehouse on the industrial outskirts of town, one of Alex's old, abandoned properties. A place with no cameras, no witnesses, and only one way in or out. Mark was the designated bait. He arrived with a duffel bag, just as instructed. The air in the warehouse was cold and thick with the smell of dust and decay. Out of the shadows stepped Alex Thompson, a smug grin plastered on his face. He looked different, thinner, with a scruffy beard, but the same arrogant glint was in his eyes. "I knew you'd be sensible, Mark," he sneered, reaching for the bag. "It's a shame, really. I quite enjoyed being dead." Very peaceful, but as Alex's fingers brushed against the duffel bag, the heavy metal doors of the warehouse slammed shut with a deafening clang. The sound echoed in the vast, empty space. Alex spun around, his grin vanishing, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then dawning horror. From the darkness, the others emerged: Clara, his brother, David, his oldest friends. They weren't crying. They weren't scared. Their faces were cold, hard masks of retribution. "What is this?" Alex stammered, backing away. "What are you all doing here?" Clara stepped forward, her voice devoid of any emotion. "We know, Alex. We've always known. Everyone at your funeral knew. It wasn't you in that casket." The color drained from Alex's face. He looked from face to face, seeing not the grieving loved ones he'd manipulated, but a silent council that had already passed judgment. "We mourned an innocent man you murdered," Mark said, his voice low and dangerous. "We carried a stranger's casket while you were hiding, waiting to profit from our pain." Alex's arrogance crumbled into pure panic. He was trapped. He had underestimated them completely. He had seen them as emotional, weak pawns in his game, never considering they could be players themselves. He had been so clever, so meticulous in faking his death, but he had overlooked the one thing he could never manipulate: their shared history and collective intelligence. He tried to reason, to bargain, to threaten, but his words were empty. They just stared back at him, their silence more terrifying than any shout. He had built his escape on a foundation of lies, and now the truth was collapsing in on him. He had orchestrated a murder and a funeral, believing he was the director of the play. But in his arrogance, he had written a final act he never saw coming. The people he had betrayed were about to deliver the most poetic and permanent form of justice. They had attended his fake funeral, and now he was about to have a very real one. The warehouse doors remained sealed, and the secret they all shared was about to be buried for good, this time with the right body. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy stories with twists you never see coming, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this tale of poetic justice. See you next time.